Hello everyone, Swiss here, and today I'm going to talk about modding for Cities Skylines, which by now has become a large part of this game, I guess. So, what I'm gonna do is to really start from nothing to implement an asset into the game, which is going to be, in my case, a school bus, a typical American school bus, which which you can see here driving around, and I'm going to show you the whole process of how I did it, and I'm going to give you some advice and guideline on how you can do your own models. And but notice that I'm not going to cover everything, so if you want to know more about how to exactly really start modeling in Blender, as example, you should look up some tutorials otherwhere on YouTube, which are plenty of. But this here is more like really the guideline to step by step go through the process of making a mod for City Skylines. And with a mod, I don't mean any script stuff. Another guy covered that. It's in German though, so I don't know. Maybe you can learn it. So yeah, that's cool. So we're going to start by basically giving you my step guide, which is going to be 5 steps. The first steps is going to be the brainstorming and searching for plans, material and ideas, stuff like that. The second step is going to be the modeling, and the third step is going to be the UV mapping. The fourth step is going to be texturing, and the last step is going to be the implementation into the actual game, in this case Cities Skylines. So I'm using 2 programs for this, and basically you need to have 2 programs for this. And the first program is going to be a 3D software. You can use whatever you feel most comfortable with, of course. I'm using Blender in my case, which is a free 3D software which you can get. It's a bit tricky to get into, but it will do. The second program I'm using is for texturing. It's called GIMP, and it's basically pretty much like Adobe Photoshop. So there you have it. And the first thing we're going to do is, of course, search for plan materials and look up some pictures of what you want to do actually. For that step, it's also important to understand certain rules the game goes by. And the first rule is that one cell in a grid is 8 to 8 meters exactly. So you have a basic understanding on how large your assets should be and look like in the game. The second important thing to notice or to know is that you should try to really model carefully and not try to waste any polygons or tris counts. In this case, you should try to keep your models really low poly, which means a small house or something like that should have around 1000 or less tris. Tris is most softwares you will see the count for tris triangles. For triangles, sorry. And for large buildings you should have up to 5000, a little bit more, but if you want to be good you should have less than that, obviously. Special buildings normally have more than that because they have some more extensive modeling going on. And vehicles, which is really important that you keep it low because you have many of those spawning all at the same time and moving around. So there you should have around a tris count 400 or 500 to 1000 tris. You can exceed that by a bit depending on the model you're doing, but it definitely should be something like 10,000. I've seen so many models of really cool cars and stuff like that which are incredibly high poly, which are around 50,000 polygons or even more, which is just that's don't download those, guys. They're really going to slow down your game by a lot. So you should avoid that. Alright, for texture size, normally you want to go for 1K texture, which is 1024 to 1024 in size, in pixels obviously, or you can also go smaller, which would be 512, or you could experiment with the size a bit, but don't use like your own numbers, because that's going to mess up the texture in game. So you really want to have those standard values. 2K textures normally are only used for really large buildings, or if you have something that really needs a high texture. For example, my last ocean liner I did had a 2K texture because it was really necessary. 4K textures you don't really need because it's just too large. You shouldn't have those. Alright, so now we have some plan materials, and I have looked up some pictures and got a rough idea on how I want to really go about my model, which should be like, I want to have a little bit stylized bus. Like I like the Simpsons in the past. Now I don't like it anymore, but in the past I watched Simpsons and I really loved that school bus, this stylized, really yellow colored school bus, which is so typical. And I don't really want to go for a too natural or realistic approach, but more like this stylized approach. So yeah, that's also something to keep in mind. If you want to go for a really realistic model, you can do that as well, of course. Alright, so now that we have that, we're here in the 3D software, and I'm starting by using my plan I have downloaded to model here my bus, as you can see. So now, as you can see, I'm here running the process of modeling, and something I normally really use and I like to use for symmetric models or assets is to use the mirror modifier, which basically allows me to only model one size and have the exact same mirrored on the other side. And what I'm doing here is start pretty low poly. As you can see, the top of the bus has still a little bit more faces than the side, but later on I will reduce that, I think. And as I said, I don't want to go into much detail, but I want to give you an idea on how to go about anyway. So it's really hard to give you like the guide on how to always achieve what you want to achieve, because for different things you really need to have different approaches. So if I model a car or a vehicle, I don't go the same about modeling as I would with a building. So obviously there's a large change to that. With buildings you basically model much more with you model more with different objects, so you're more in the object mode, at least I am, while with vehicles I really mostly do it in the edit mode. The edit mode is a really great mode because it allows you to keep track of your polys much better than if you're working only in the sorry about that. If you're only working in the object mode. In the object mode you can lose track very fast because you're adding objects on objects and stuff like that, and that's not really well. Yeah. Also, something which is really important, I'm going to speed up the background here, but something that's really important is to have everything you model, the whole model has to be one mesh at the end. So you can't have different meshes, but you can work with different meshes at first and join them in the end, which is really great thing, because if you do that you can basically add stuff. So as example, I'm going to later add the um, how do you call it in English? The side mirrors, yeah, right, the side mirrors of the bus. And those side mirrors are going to be separate models first, and at the end I'm going to join them. And I'm running this whole presentation here from now, I think around 500 or 400 speed. I hope I remember that to do that. And if you're wondering, everything is pre-recorded because I wasn't really in the mood to speak when I was modeling the whole stuff, and like the whole process is just pre-recorded because I sometimes need to concentrate a bit. And yeah, the more you try to go into detail and try to um, figure out what's really going on there, the more you will notice that you will also try to model stuff which isn't really important, or you will not be able to see from far from a city skylines view. And there it's really important to learn that you sort of keep your model reduced. So really try to always think, how can I make this simpler by not really stripping away too much, but at the same way keeping it really low poly. And that's sort of a challenge. Especially as you can see with this bus, it's really hard to do the front because there's going so much more on, and so much more stuff is going to be there than in the back. So I was struggling there at first, and I really had to retry several times to get it right. But yeah, that's basically the modeling process. And the next thing I'm going to talk about is the UV mapping. Right, so you have already seen a small part of the UV mapping, which I did with the wheels and with the mirrors. And now I'm going to do the same with the bus. And the first step I'm going to do is mark seams. This is a really important step, and I'm not going to in too much detail. I will hopefully remember to leave some useful links for you to Blender tutorials, which I highly recommend, and who can explain that stuff better than I ever could. Basically, what you really need to do is mark those seams, so you have a basic grid going on and sort of an idea where different faces are going to be in your UV. If you have done that, you can unwrap it, as you can see. And if you have unwrapped this, I'm going to basically try to place it in positions that are really good later on for me to texture on. So obviously you want to have, ideally you want to have all faces basically the same size, and if you can't afford that because your texture is too small, you want to have those faces which are really going to be in the center of attention, basically like in this case the side and front of the bus. Basically everything you can see you want to have bigger, and stuff which doesn't really matter too much, in this case the roof, because it's a pretty basic texture, you can do that smaller, but you want to have those things the biggest as possible, which are going to be seen later on in the game. So it's self-explanatory, really. I know I can't explain that too much too good, but it's basically quite simple. Also, you want to really try to use all the place that is left on your UV map. So really try to fully make use of the space you have, because if you leave space out, just blank, then this means that the texture you have done for your model is not used really efficiently, and you could probably have done with a smaller texture. So really try to, it's like a puzzle, you want to have everything as close and tight as possible. So yeah, that's basically the UV mapping, and really depending on how large your model is or how complicated it is, the UV mapping can be quite tiresome and quite a big task. It's definitely something that is not a lot of fun to do. I guess probably maybe in other programs it's easier and less of a pain in the ass, but in Blender it's really annoying. So I'm glad that this model is really simple and it's done quite easily. So now, as you can see, the UV is finished, and I'm going to export it as a UV layout, which I later going to use for my texture to know exactly where my different faces are, and so I can basically know the position of every face in the other program. So now to the really interesting part, and the part that I most like about this whole process here, which is texturing. Oh my god. Oh yeah, I hope I spelled that right, or at least like a little bit. Okay, so basically what I'm doing here is importing this UV layout. I exported from the other program, and I'm importing it here as a new layer. And as you can see, it's already 1K sized, because that's the normal size it normally exports if you not specifically tell you what it should export. So yeah, I was a lazy guy and it just made it correct. Basically I was a bit lucky here, but yeah. If you're wondering that some of the UV layout is maybe a little bit other than what you've seen last in screen, it's simply because I did some smaller changes and adjustments, which are not really essential, but took a bit of time, and basically it just makes the model a bit cleaner. So yeah, that was also a part, but that's not really interesting and doesn't tell you much, so I left it out in this video. But otherwise, you have seen so far everything I've done. Fast speeded, of course, because otherwise it would be a bit boring, I guess. So here you can see now I'm doing some tires and other stuff, really basic first. There are different ways you can approach the texture. People who really like to use real photographs and just use them to sort of overlap the thing, yeah, the UV, and use real textures to represent a game model. I personally don't like to do that because, in my opinion, it loses some charm, some charm which fits Cities Skylines. I like to do all the textures really by hand, so basically that means I'm using different layers and go from there and build up from the ground. As you can see, basic texture up to making the windows and the headlights and lights and stuff like that. You will see. Now this is also, of course, past forward. I hope you enjoy, and maybe I can fit some music in. I'm not sure. Maybe. We'll see. So as you was as you were able to see in this process, I really saving the texture all the time and looking at it in the other program in the rendered modus to see how it looks, and I'm always double checking everything. And I also use my web browser to get some pictures of the real school buses and get an idea on how it should look and how it should feel. But as you probably noticed already, I'm not going for exactly replica of a real bus, but rather I'm sort of doing my own version of it. But it's really trying to touch on the meta on the real bus, on the real existing styled bus, as you would say. But it's its own creation, really. Yeah, because I just like to do that. But different people obviously will handle this really differently, and it's really up to you and how and what you want to do. But something I really like about Cities Skylines is that there are no limitations in regard to what you can do and what you can't. It's really up to your imagination. So, I mean, you could do a flying truck or whatever, and it would perfectly work. And it's cool to experiment with what you can come up with. I think that's a really essential part and a really fun part as well of modding for Cities Skylines. Yeah, that was just a little side note here. as you can see, I did a color gradient, which you can see in the windows, and this sort of helps to make the windows later on a little bit more believable. However, of course, the final effects will come with the other textures. The texture right now I'm doing is the diffuse texture, and that's by far the texture that requires the most of work, because it's basically all the stuff you really see. The other textures are overlays for the diffuse texture. Another thing I'm doing here is to add new parts to the bus. So I added those indicators on top of the headlights to give it a bit more detail, and I'm also texturing those and also giving a color gradient with that. So the last thing I'm doing here is to add an ambient occlusion map to this model. You can also find useful tutorials on how to do that on YouTube. Actually, I ended up not using it really for my model. It didn't really make any difference, or it was more of a bad difference because the way I had my mapping. So you need to sort of find out if your mapping is okay for that or if it doesn't work. It can produce some fairly good effects when the mapping is done correctly. In my case, the mapping was a bit not perfect, so it produced bad results, and yeah, in that case I pretty much left it. So now I've done the diffuse map, and now I'm doing the other map types. And for this specific vehicle, we're going to use some other typed textures. The first thing we're going to use is the specular map. Specular map? Yeah, I think so. And this basically gives reflection to all parts that should reflect in real life. So windows have a reflection, and headlights can have a reflection as well, a bit, but not too much. And I'm going to add that, and you'll see how that texture actually looks and how I do it. It's pretty basic, and it's pretty easy, I think, to understand how to exactly do that. Then the other texture I'm going to do is the normal map texture, which basically helps to produce some fake bumps in my texture. So as example, the stop sign will have a small bump to the outside so that it seems like it would come out of the texture, but it is not actually modeled out of the texture, but is rather just yeah, just fake. And other stuff is also going to be a little bit fake, like those side bars you have on the bus. I don't even know how you call that, but you know what I mean. And then, what is the last texture? Yeah, right. Then the last texture is going to be the illusion map. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, illusion map. Illumination map. Sorry. Yeah, illumination map, which is going to be the one which is bring the bus to light. Basically, it defines where the lights are and where the indicators are, and the bus will then act accordingly. So, as example, if he will go into a right-hand curve in the game, his right-hand side indicators will indicate that he's going there. So that's really cool. And later on we will also see that I'm using here nodes in this program. I'm using node editor to show you guys how it actually looks, and so that I can see myself how it will actually look in game. The result of course, it's not going to be the same as in-game. In-game, normally the specular map looks a bit better, and the illumination map as well. So yeah, but basically that's what I'm doing here, and how the whole node editor works and stuff like that. You also should really visit other channels, because it's a known matter entirely. I think it's really complicated. It's so complicated, in fact, that I think you could really study it to full extent, and I have not even touched the surface of that. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing here. Okay, I forgot totally about the C texture, which I don't really know what it stands for. But basically what it does is really important, because it is the color defining texture, which basically means everything white on this texture will indicate that you can later on in the game choose a color for it, and it will apply it. So that's really cool, and I obviously wanted to use that feature. It's really important, especially for bosses, that if you say like, I have a red line and I want my bus to be red, not yellow, and that I obviously wanted to give the chance that you also can have that. So this texture is really important. I think it's really important that you add that for vehicles, and if you can add it for certain buildings as well, that gives a nice variation. So it's pretty simple actually. Basically everything that is black will not change color, will remain the color it is. Everything that's white will be able to be changed. Really important here is that you make sure that the lights and certain parts of the bus which you don't want to have colorized, that you make them black. So work carefully there, and I'm really sorry that that wasn't in the video. I couldn't find it anywhere. I think I have recorded everything, but it seems that part was lost. So I'm sorry for that. So the other texture I already mentioned is the illumination texture, and there basically for vehicles it acts differently than it would for other buildings. So 0.5, which is like a gray color, is a neutral color, which means that there will be nothing done to it. It will just stay as it is. 0, which is black, is used for turning signals, and 1, which is white, is used for braking and headlight signals. But yeah, not signals, but basically torches or lights or whatever you call it. So yeah, that's those textures which I forgot to show you video for. I'm totally sorry about that, but you're not missing out much. It's really easy to understand and do. So yeah. Alright, now to the next part, which is going to be the LOD, which is basically our model but just simplified. And the reason we're doing that is that we want to have a different model showed when we're scrolling out. So basically details like indicators or the mirrors on the side of the bus, those things are not going to be seen when you're really far away. And so it's really important that you make a custom LOD, because basically in Cities Skylines the generated one does normally not work very well. So if you really want to do quality work, do your own LOD. I actually really wouldn't know what LOD stands for, but it's basically really the simplified version of your model. So I'm going to strip away many parts of my model and make it really simpler, and try to save as much polygons as I can. I think in the end I managed pretty well, around what was it? I think 180 tris or something like that. That's okay. From 480 to 180 or something like that. That's quite a gap, and that should do the job just fine. Yeah, so yeah, you want to do that, and I'm going to fast forward that as well as the rest. See ya. basically did there was a bit more complicated and not really smart, now that I come to think of it. But basically what I did or tried to do was to get both the LOD and my normal mesh to be the same size and to be in this grid, because if I'm going to later on export this whole matter, I'm going to export it with a factor of 800, so it's 800 the size it actually is, and that's going to be the exact size I need for Cities Skylines. And basically what that means is that one small grid in Blender is going to be 8 to 8 meters. So because I'm a total noob here, I have just measured this like with from I've just measured it with my eyes basically. And so it ended up to be a bit too big in the actual game, but you'll see that a bit later when I implement it. And that's quite easy to fix actually, because the in-game editor allows you to sort of still change the size. It really important is that the LOD and the normal mesh, not normal mesh, but the standard mesh is all the same size. That's basically it, and that's why I did this really weird thing here to get both on the same size. Also, the central pivot point of both should be in the 0 point, the nil point, and that's really important that you do that. And this is basically, you know how to do that if you use those programs, because that's like the first step you need to learn for all 3D softwares, basically to know where your 0 point of an object is and stuff like that. So yeah, that's basically it. Now we're nearly done. Now we just need to implement it into the game. So in the game, the first step I'm actually going to do is to disable all mods. Not mods, but like all assets at least, because it's just so stupidly annoying to load every single of those assets into the asset editor if you don't even want to use those. So I highly recommend doing that step, because otherwise you can wait like up to 20 minutes or stuff like that, depending on how many mods or assets you're using. Okay, so the path where you just throw everything in, right? So you have exported your LOD and your normal and your model as FBX files. You can see it in the video how I do that with the settings I'm using for Blender. Obviously, it really depends on what software you're using and which settings you have to use, so I can't really help there. But as soon as you've done that and have all the textures, you basically just take all of that stuff and put it into the Colossal Order folder, which is going to be found in local and wait a second, I'm going to basically just search it out, which is going to be found in app. Wait, I'm going to record that. In app data, local, Colossal Order, Cities Skylines, add-ons, import, and here you have it. And basically what I do, because I'm a lazy bastard, I have all my stuff on the desktop anyway, so you just school bus. Try to name, obviously all the textures which have to do with the model have to be named the same, but you can read that in the link I'm posting, in the asset editor link, where it's really easy to understand how to exactly do that. So we have NSC FBX, FBX LOD, I and D is and LODD. I've done that as well, you don't necessarily need to do that. Basically it's the diffuse texture but smaller, so it's scaled for the LOD as well. Alright, so we're going to put it in here, right? But basically I already had it. Okay. Alright, so now we're back in the asset editor, and what you want to do here is find the model. In my case it's called school bus, so it's on the end on this list. And really important is that you basically try to use whatever category is fitting to your model, which is, yeah, pretty obvious if you ask me, but you never know. So if you want to have a bus, you probably want to use a vehicle. Alright, so, okay. Anyways, here you can see this basic bus, and you want to have your model basically showing in the same direction, pointing in the same direction as the base model is. Because if you don't have that, chances are that your import is going to be messed up and that your vehicle is the wrong way around or something like that. So you can use the tools you have at hand in the asset editor to achieve that. Also you can change the scale, so in my case here I used scale 1, but later on I re-imported it and used scale 0.9 because, yeah, it was a little bit too large, as I already said. And then you're basically done. That's not more to it. Now I'm here saving my asset, and if you see in the right corner you can choose your own picture if you want to, and I do that, and I basically just made a render picture which I did as my picture, which I'm going to use if I'm going to upload it. If I'm going to upload it, I don't really know yet. We'll see. Yeah, so what else can I say? I think now we're really through, and it took me nearly an hour to really complete this whole thing here to tell you guys. But I don't want it to rush too hard, just to keep it entertaining. I know it's maybe a little bit painful, like so long. I'm probably going to be in 2 parts this whole video, but I don't know. But I think it's really cool to give sort of advice to people who want to maybe also do their own mods and are a little bit afraid to try it, because there's really nothing holding you. I think it's just if you have the time and if you're willing to do it, just do it. Really, it's as simple as that. Blender is really pain in the ass at first, so be prepared for that program. At least it was for me. I didn't like it at all, but it's a really steep learning curve at first, and then it's sort of, as soon as you figure it out, it's going to be less and less of a pain. GIMP is really easy to use. I think it's pretty much like Photoshop, just with less features. What else is there? Yeah, I think that's really it. And I hope you really enjoyed that video. Maybe it encouraged you a bit to try to mod yourself. If it did, that's great. Have a nice day. Thanks for watching.